My name is Dylan McDonell. I have a master's in Middle East studies and I'm an avid beer brewer. About 5 years ago, I read an article about some Israeli scientists that isolated beer yeast from Tel Asafi, ancient Gath, from 850 BCE. Around the same time, Seamus Blackley, the father of the Xbox, worked with some scientists, some Egyptologists, and microbiologists to bake a loaf of sourdough bread authentically with yeast from 4500 BCE. So this set my mind in motion. I wanted to do a similar project. Upon scouring the internet for unique yeast strains, I was able to find the website of the Israeli scientists that had isolated this yeast. The website, Primer's Yeast, stated that they were going to be selling this ancient yeast in a few months, and so I contacted them, and after some conversations, then Primer's Yeast and I are partnering to create the closest thing to an authentically brewed period beer. I would call it an authentically brewed Egyptian medicinal beer. So, with the agreement in place, I began my research into what to use for the beer. I will say that my methodology was to utilize the modern brewing process to ensure that sanitary conditions were met, and only change the process or specific materials or ingredients when presented with information that illustrated that that specific practice or ingredient was to be used or might be used in the process anciently, especially if it related to how it would taste at the end. While a longer discussion could be had about the specifics within these articles, I feel like these are the most noteworthy components. So in one of the articles, in Archaeological Perspectives on Beer in Mesopotamia, then the author finds that, and I quote here, more extensive residue analysis at Tel Bazi in Syria has produced solid evidence for home brewing on a large scale during the late Bronze Age. Nearly 1 in 50 houses excavated at the site appears to have brewed its own beer using a standard set of ceramic vessels. The author also finds that some beers were certainly filtered to some extent, and that there is a significant disagreement about the alcohol content, with ranges between 0.5 to 6%. Ours is going to be closer to the 5 or 6%, probably 5%. In another article, in revealing Invisible Brews, a new approach to the chemical identification of beer, the authors find that beer was identified as one component of a mixed alcoholic drink, which also included grape wine and possibly honey mead. One commonly reoccurring fact throughout many of these papers that I feel should be stated here is that hops were not utilized. Those have only been around for about 500 years, and that spontaneous fermentation was utilized, meaning that these were sour beers that were made. So what we're looking at is an aged sour beer and wine mead mixture with a few floral ingredients. So with this understanding, I was able to put together some loose idea of what the brewing process would entail. But I needed the ingredients and the amounts. It wasn't long before I found myself reading the Ebers Papyrus. The Ebers Papyrus is a medical text from about 1550 BCE. It has 700 to 800 recipes, some of which are extravagant, others which are mundane. I limited my research of the recipes to only recipes that mention beer and drinking as a mode of delivery. And that gave me roughly 75 recipes, of which ingredients weren't only mentioned, but also the relative amounts of each ingredient, which was extremely important. Additionally, I found that in the 75 recipes there were 122 ingredients. Half of those ingredients mentioned are only mentioned one time. 68% are mentioned less than 3 times. Of the following ingredients and relative amounts, which I'm going to give for an extrapolated 10-gallon batch, which we'll be using, they were found to be in relatively common amounts. So I'm going to go into each of those. So first up are figs. Figs are mentioned in 30% of the 75 recipes. We're going to be adding 4 cups of sycamore figs. If you don't have sycamore figs, then black mission figs are an acceptable replacement. I spoke with a fig expert and they mentioned that. We were able to procure some sycamore figs, which are large edible figs known for their luscious honeyed taste. It has a distinctive squat shape and tough skin. Sycamore figs have been a staple in Egypt since 3000 BCE, depicted in ancient hieroglyphs and found in numerous archaeological sites. They are enjoyed fresh, dried, or preserved, and their sweet flavor and nutritional value make them a versatile ingredient in both sweet and savory dishes. Traditionally, the figs have been used to treat skin disease and digestive issues due to their high fiber content and soothing sap. Native to Africa, The sycamore fig is commonly found in lower elevations of the Sahara Desert, where it provides essential shade and sustenance. So sycamore figs are no longer commercially available because the wasp that pollinated them went extinct. I was able to find some through a friend and a colleague who procured some sycamore figs from a 1400-year-old grove of sycamore trees near the Temple of Karnak in Egypt. So I feel incredibly lucky to have that. Next, Egyptian balsam fruit was mentioned in 28% of the recipes. We'll be using 4 cups of that. These are also known as desert dates. They're small, round fruit that grows on the balsam tree. The fruit has a sticky, resinous texture and a sweet, spicy scent. Historically, the balsam tree was cultivated in the gardens of ancient Egypt and in the Middle East. It thrives in warm tropical climates and requires meticulous care for fruit yield. While its culinary use has diminished over time, the Egyptian balsam fruit was once used to flavor foods and wines. In traditional medicine, the resinous sap of the Egyptian balsam fruit was used for its antiseptic and anti-inflammatory properties. The balsam tree prefers arid, sunny environments and is native to the Arabian Peninsula and North Africa. Next, raisins or grapes are mentioned in 22% of the recipes, so we chose 4 cups of sultana raisins from Israel. These are plump, juicy, dried grapes with a bright, almost translucent color. The term sultana comes from Arabic word sultan, reflecting its regal status among dried fruits. Golden raisins are made from the same grapes as regular raisins, but they undergo a more sophisticated drying process. These raisins are a versatile ingredient, adding a fruitier, lighter flavor to baked goods. Their plumpness and sweetness make them a preferred choice for culinary creations. The flavonoids present in golden raisins make them antioxidant rich and a healthier option compared to other varieties. The Israeli golden raisin thrive in warm Mediterranean climate of Israel, where the controlled environment ensures the quality and consistency. Next up is honey. Honey is mentioned in 22% of the recipes, and we will be using Yemeni cedar honey, and we used 4 cups of this. Yemeni cedar honey is harvested from the nectar of the cedar tree. This honey is characterized by its thick consistency and a warm, woody aroma. Yemeni cedar honey has been revered both as a medicinal elixir and a delightful sweetener since ancient times. The cedar tree grows in the rugged mountains of Yemen, where beekeepers employ age-old methods to harvest this honey, preserving its authenticity and quality. While its primary use is as a sweetener, Yemeni cedar honey's complex flavor profile makes it an excellent complement to a variety of dishes. It possesses antibacterial and anti-inflammatory properties, making it a sought-after natural remedy. Next up, prickly juniper berries are mentioned in 21% of the recipes. We'll be using 2 cups of those. It's known for its aromatic orange-red berries and needle-like leaves. This plant, native to rocky shores and mountain slopes across the Mediterranean region, thrives in harsh environments and is known for its resiliency and adaptability. The berries have been used to flavor beverages and dishes in the Mediterranean for their distinct aromatic qualities. Beyond its culinary use, the prickly juniper berry boasts a host of health benefits, including antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties that promote overall well-being. As a natural diuretic, it supports kidney health and aids in detoxification, while its antimicrobial properties help fend off infections and boost the immune system. Next up, we use the Egyptian carob fruit, which is in 16% of the recipes, and we'll be using 1 cup of that. This is known for its long, leathery pods filled with sweet, edible pulp and hard seed. The pods resemble a dark brown curved horn. Carob has been cultivated since ancient times in the Mediterranean region and requires little maintenance. Carob's sugary pulp, which contains 48 to 56% sugars, has been used for human consumption for centuries. Carob has been widely used as a herbal remedy in traditional folk medicine. It offers several biological activities, including antioxidant, anti-cancer, and anti-diabetic, due to the presence of high quantity of phenol and antibacterial properties. The carob tree is native to the eastern Mediterranean region and is cultivated elsewhere, particularly in areas that mimic its native arid conditions. Next, we'll be using black cumin. Archaeological evidence reveals black cumin among the treasures of ancient Egypt. As with all of these other ingredients, with the exception of the carob fruit, they were found in the tomb of King Tut, native to Eastern Europe and Western Asia, but has naturalized over a much wider area, including parts of Europe, Northern Africa, and East to Myanmar. The seeds are used as a spice in many cuisines, flavoring curries, rice, breads, and sweet confections. They are widely used in India, the Middle East, and parts of North Africa. Black cumin seeds and their oil are widely used in traditional Islamic medicine to treat a variety of ailments. The seeds are believed to stimulate lactation and have been used for menstrual and postpartum problems. Next is frankincense, which is in 17% of the recipes. We'll be using a half a cup of this, which is a lot. We're using the Boswellia sacra. I probably said that incorrectly, I'm sorry. But that is a tree that can grow up to 8 meters. It has papery bark, compound leaves, a cluster of small yellow-white flowers. Frankincense has been traded for over 5,000 years and is used by ancient Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans. It was so valuable that it was often worth more than its weight in gold. While not commonly used for food, frankincense is edible and has been used to flavor traditional Middle Eastern liquors and dishes. Frankincense is a resin renowned for its anti-inflammatory, analgesic, and antiseptic properties. It has been used in traditional medicine to treat various ailments, including arthritis, digestive disorders, and skin conditions. Native to the Arabian Peninsula and the Horn of Africa, particularly Oman, Yemen, and Somalia. It grows on the rocky slopes and ravines, often in calcareous soil. So those are all of the adjuncts that we'll be using. In addition to those, we also need our base malt, obviously. For that, we will be using purple Egyptian barley and 10 pounds of that. Luckily, that is grown here in Utah, so I was very lucky to have that. It is a hulless grain known for its 6-row structure and purplish-black bran layer. Originating in the Middle East, it has been a foundational crop in early agricultural practices. Its flavor profile is described as mellow with subtle coffee undertones. This barley variety has adapted to diverse climates and growing conditions, from the fertile lands of the Nile to the arid expanses near the Caspian Sea. Purple Egyptian barley is rich in anthocyanins and other phytonutrients, making it a potential source of antioxidants. Next up, smoked acidulated emmer malt. I could not find any emmer malt, so I had to malt my own, and I also had to acidulate and smoke my own. We used 5 pounds of that. Emmer wheat was one of the first crops domesticated in the Fertile Crescent and has been a staple in ancient diets essentially ever since. Emmer wheat is known for its resilience, thriving in poor soils, and resistant to many diseases that affect modern wheat strains. Emmer wheat has a rich, nutty flavor, and nutritionally it is high in fiber and nutrient dense, making it a healthy addition to any diet. Some of these ingredients were probably more extravagant than they needed to be, such as the cider honey, but I felt like including those led to a higher quality and a more locally sourced batch of beer that would add depth to the authenticity of it. So after I've gotten all the ingredients, then next up is the recipe. The recipe remained fairly similar to a modern recipe, as I felt that changing the process to something more ancient may not necessarily result in a different kind of beer. So I soaked the Egyptian balsam fruit, the figs, the raisins, the prickly juniper berries, and the carob fruit for about a week beforehand to rehydrate them and to get some of the microbes from the fruit themselves. I ground the purple Egyptian barley and emmer wheat and added it to the mash tun. I mashed in at 131, rested at 147 for 30 minutes, 157 for 30 minutes, and mashed out 11.5 gallons at 172 degrees. I added the soaked fruit, the black cumin, to the boil tank and boiled for 1 hour. Upon cooling, I added the Yemeni honey and frankincense at 95 degrees. The reason for that was to not destroy the honey. I cooled overnight rather than did a cold crash. The reason being is that the Ebers Papyrus actually tells in a number of recipes to cool overnight. One can imagine with it being a sour beer and having a number of microbes introduced to it that it was probably fairly active, and so fermentation could probably be seen significantly after the first night. So we'll ferment at 70 degrees, do a secondary bottle, wait for 2 to 3 weeks, and then try. And that's pretty much it. I do have one kind of addendum to this. When I was just finishing everything up, then I knocked over the yeast in the starter, and as I like to describe it, I let out an Oscar-worthy no. Now, 2 things really came to mind. One, this is a sour beer. Because it's a sour beer, the introduction of additional microbes might not be the worst thing. Second, was that this yeast has been around for 3,000 years, and it's not going to die just because it fell on my floor. It's too resilient for that. In this process, I probably made it a little bit more authentic, to be quite honest, because the understanding of pasteurization wasn't around back then, the understanding of microbes wasn't around back then, and it was absolutely through wild yeast that beer was fermented back at that time. So again, that's where we're at right now. We'll see where we land. Stay tuned. All right, so I have bottled the beer, and I'm ready to give it a try. Right out of the gate, it does smell more of grains than I'm used to. There we go. Not very clear, but that's all right. It smells like a sour. It definitely smells like a sour beer. It smells like a goza. That's a sour beer. Yeah, that's not bad actually. I'd buy that. I wouldn't pay this much to make it again, but I'd buy it from the store.